Welcome to the Flourishing Leader podcast, where we dive into the dynamics of the professional working world. I'm Audrey Simmons.
And I'm Belinda Joseph-Pirame. This podcast is dedicated to inspiring leaders to live a life of well-being, both personally and professionally, so that they too may flourish.
Today, we're talking about the pace of life and, on the heels of techno stress, but really thinking about this idea of moving at the pace of your serenity and noticing when you need to take a pause, like when things are like, oh gosh, this is really getting hectic, and recognizing, oh, when I have that thought, like that might be a really good time to take a pause.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is, just so apparent to me at the moment is just how overwhelmed many people I come into contact with seem to be. And that overwhelm is from a variety of things. So, often it can be to do with workload, managing interpersonal relationships, getting through work tasks, managing time. But in addition to that, there can be this overwhelm that comes just in terms of life and dealing with life admin. And those two things together seem to be creating this sense of there's just so much stuff to deal with and not enough time to slow down, that there's just a lot to manage.
Yeah, and there seems to be a feeling too of having no control over the pace, right? Like it's unmanageable, it's out of control. No matter if the emails got all answered or if the to-do list today happened by chance to get all done, I don't know that there's a sense of relief even experienced, at least long term, right? It's pretty short-lived.
Yeah. There's this kind of rushed, automatic way of doing things because there's just so much stuff to do to actually sort of have space for your own thoughts. Yeah, my sense is a lot of people are grappling with that. The comment that you just made was interesting because what went through my mind is it's almost like being in control of things and then this point coming along where it feels like things are pulling a person along. So they may start out with control and mastery over all of it and then end up feeling, just pulled along by all of the things that they need to do.
Yeah, it's like these past strategies that have worked well no longer work anymore. And a part of that is because our responsibilities as time progresses change. So, the strategy of do your homework first before you go play outside is really effective when we're 10 or 11. But that strategy of work before play, it doesn't work anymore once we enter into our professional lives. And then it certainly doesn't work as a leader because the to-do list is never done. There's always something happening. So if you don't play until all your work is done and your work is never done, you're always rushing. You're always stressed and quote unquote behind. And it makes me wonder, like, okay, if that's just the common denominator is, the work is never done, then what are we rushing around for? I mean, really, at some point, aren't we a little bit responsible for continuing to kick the wheel and having it spin? And I think sometimes it's horrifying for people to hear like, hey, the to-do list is never going to be done. But there's also some freedom in it. Like, okay, it's never going to be done. So it's okay to like go home at a proper hour. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, one of the things I often think about and discuss with people is this idea of there being no clear desk policy. No sooner do you clear a few tasks, a whole other pile of papers appears on top,
Mm.
metaphorically speaking. And so, what are the possibilities in the time that you have available? If it's not possible to get through all of it, what are the priorities? It's interesting because I don't think the concept of prioritizing is new news to many people. And yet, it's interesting that there's this continued struggle with it in some people. Of course, we know that it's important to prioritize and reprioritize, but somehow that expectation that all the tasks be completed, whether it's sort of leadership related tasks or personal tasks. I don't know, it's interesting. I think that
Mhm.
expectation is still there. Makes me wonder where that comes from, what generates that.
It's hard to remember kind of pre-COVID, to be honest. I think those dynamics still existed, working in healthcare at that time prior to COVID and through COVID. But I think it got kicked up, it just intensified tremendously during the
Yeah.
pandemic. And I think we've talked about that people just haven't been able to downshift. And I was actually horrified to attend a function where someone was like, we know how productive we were during the pandemic. We can do it again. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is not what this is about. Like, that was an emergency situation that we all, as humanity, tried to do our best and give all that we had. But we do that because it's an emergency, but that's not a sustainable way of living. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that there's strong messaging going on right now that's conflicting. There's some people that I think maybe they weren't really, really part of COVID, but saw the results of all the decisions that were being able to be made and all the policies being written out and all the interventions that were rolled out in a small period of time. And they want that to be just the going productivity rate. And then there's another camp that's like, I have a bunch of traumatized individuals that do not know how to get back to maybe not pre COVID, but a different view of, the term work life balance, which I cannot stand that term. I think it's a terrible term. Just the idea of balance, I think, is a very static moment in time that really promotes this I got it, now I don't have it, kind of thinking that we just don't need more of. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent.
That's okay. Well, it's important, really, what you're saying about the work life balance related stuff as well, because what that made me think about is that there are some roles in which that's just not going to happen. How I understand the term is this not only the sense of internal balance, but is almost implied that there's this even split between the
Mhm.
attention and resources you give to work
Mhm.
and then to life outside of work. But there are some jobs where that's just not going to be possible. And people can still thrive in those
Right.
circumstances. I sort of tend to think of it more in terms of work life harmony, which
Mhm.
might sound a bit I don't know if
Perfect.
it sounds a bit woo woo.
Perfect.
There's just something that for me feels just a little bit more fluid, I suppose,
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what you were saying earlier, because I was also thinking about that thing of leaders feeling overwhelmed. And you were talking about the high productivity during the height of the pandemic. Some people disappear into intensely high levels of work to cope with what is
Mhm.
actually happening. That becomes the vehicle to maybe not deal with something else, not look too closely at something else. I don't have any judgment around that.
Yeah, it's a good
The
thing to highlight
coping,
the coping mechanism.
yeah, just that thing of using work to cope. And, you know, some people just have a tendency as well towards overwork. That feeling of being busy can get confused with being productive. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a leader that you've been led by that you felt was really quite overwhelmed. But I have to say, I've had that experience. I don't know. It's almost like the stress that it can transmit throughout a team is really, it's almost like it becomes I don't want to use the term contagious. I don't have a better term.
Well, it's like those mirroring, right? Isn't there like the mirroring
Sure.
neurons, and then we pick up on those and not endorphins, but the what makes you smell good?
Oh, pheromones.
Pheromones. Yeah, but pheromones that they also work with the anxiety and
Yeah.
fear and all of that. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What was that like? Like, so you walk in and you say good morning to your boss, and they're just like, "Oh my God, the sky is falling."
Yeah. There's so much going on. It doesn't feel like things are going to be okay. It doesn't feel like there's time and space for me to ask a question. I think that overwhelm doesn't just affect the leader, it affects the team
Mhm.
around them. And so for me, I think it makes it really important, not only from just a well-being standpoint for a person to look after themselves, but they're having an impact on other people. And if you're wanting a happy, contented, productive team, living in that space of overwhelm doesn't sort of sit well.
No, I mean, that's the work of the leader, and that's why it's so important to almost view oneself as an athlete when leading, because if you don't get your sleep and your rest and the water you need and the nutrition you need and
Mm,
the uninterrupted time so you can think and strategize, you're not going to be grounded. You're not going to be a safe place for your team to come and get support from or guidance or just have time to be heard.
yeah. And I was just thinking as well, like maybe the reasons for a leader's overwhelm, this is not to imply that it is necessarily their fault, but I think there's something about maybe noticing the impact of being overwhelmed, not only on themselves, but on other people. Because it's a funny time in the world, isn't there? There's an awful lot going on. I suppose that's true at any given time, but it's just in terms of the rate of change, the pace of change, the intensity of some of the things going on in the world and the more distressing things that are happening. Never mind sort of trying to get through daily life. There are things happening that are having an impact that they're not the individual's fault, but they can make that decision to try and notice and respond.
Yeah, I think another piece is, obviously recognizing that the experience of overwhelm, the felt lived experience is pretty unpleasant. And so maybe there's an opportunity for compassion for oneself and also for others, like the team, because and we know this to be true, that these emotions can be contagious, if you will, then we're just perpetuating the cycle. And I think part of overwhelm, there's a moment right before experiencing overwhelm where there's like this thought that we have that's like, this is too much or this is not good. Like there's a judgment that like is right before that experience of overwhelm. And so it's almost like an invitation to really look at, okay, so before that experience of overwhelm, before making that decision, this is too much or this is bad, what do you feel in your body? Like what tension is building up? And then realizing that tension is actually your sign to get up, take a breather, take a break, go for a walk, and maybe noticing somebody else is overwhelmed, grab them, take them for a walk with you, but understanding too that not only as leaders do we set the pace, but also we contribute. I would say that we massively contribute to the culture, because you can say all you want about, you know, try this, do that. But if we as leaders do not embody that and actually work the steps, if you will, or work the suggestions we're giving or what science is telling us is true, our words are lost. Part of the work of a leader is to take care of yourself so that you can role model your message, because your mouth is not enough to get your message across to your teams. You have to live it. And that requires intentionality for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. And it's walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Which, of
It's
course, I
interesting.
immediately feel guilty about. You know that as soon as I say that, because I think of all the things that I'm not walking the walk on. I'm like, oh, shame, guilt.
Well, I suppose to revisit your point about compassion,
Yes.
but I wonder if that's an opportunity for compassion for oneself, because we're human beings first. The Flourishing Leader podcast has two sponsors, Team of Greats, LLC, and Eudaimonic Therapy and Coaching. Our first sponsor, Eudaimonic Therapy and Coaching, provides psychotherapy for people struggling with stress, anxiety, and depression. Also on offer is executive coaching for leaders experiencing stress, burnout, and other well-being issues blocking personal effectiveness. For information or to book a free consultation, please visit www.eudaimonic.co.uk. That's www.eudaimonic.co.uk.
Our second sponsor is Team of Greats. Team of Greats is a coaching company partnering with professionals around the world, including those with ADHD or ADHD-like characteristics, offering individual leadership coaching, team coaching, and mindfulness courses. For more information, reach out to www.teamofgreats, that's GREATS.com, teamofgreats.com.
I was curious, actually, Audrey. I was sharing earlier that I'd had this experience with an overwhelmed leader, and I wondered if you'd ever had any experiences that were similar to that, being
Oh,
led by
yes.
somebody.
Yes, indeed. It's challenging because, you want to be respectful of the individual, and there's a fine line between sort of stepping in and being like, okay, why don't we try this approach? And that backfiring sometimes, with employer having to be really sensitive to that. And then, yeah, I think there's one situation I recall where I was able to just say, can we just pause for a minute and just acknowledge the fact that like 5 minutes ago, everything was okay. And now everything seems not to be okay. And I think we need to get some more additional information before we make kind of a call on the situation, like whether that it's as terrible as we think it is. So I was able to sort of like pause and like, let's do this instead. But my God, when I think about like my early nursing career and different charge nurses, it would make you sick to your stomach. I mean, as you coming out of nursing school, you're in your early 20s, so you don't have a ton of life experience and a lot of coping skills. So to have an older female, which was generally the case at that time when I was in nursing, as a charge nurse having a meltdown, I mean, you did not feel safe.
Yes. I mean, that's a really important point, actually, the feeling of safety. I would think it would feel really important to feel like your boss has got the reins of things. We're talking about this thing of overwhelm, and what comes to mind is that it's often accompanied by other things. So often when people are describing feeling overwhelmed, it might be also that they're feeling anxious about something, or they're feeling sad about something, or low about something, or frustrated, or it's sort of quite interesting the impact it
Mhm.
has on mental health in the broadest sense.
So you feel overwhelmed, and then the precursor
Mm.
to that is, you have a thought, this is too much, or this is not good. I wonder if the precursor to that is telling yourself you don't have a choice or experiencing a lack of choice in that particular situation in that moment.
Sometimes with overwhelm, it's not noticed until after the fact, looking back. Often you can be in overwhelm before you realize that's actually what's happening for you.
And then learn from it. Like notice what happened in that last experience of overwhelm and
Mm-hmm.
see if there's not something.
Yeah, there is a lag that can
Mhm.
happen between feeling overwhelmed and then noticing that you
Mhm.
felt overwhelmed. And the hope is that that gap between the event and the realization
Mhm.
narrows so that you're noticing in the moment and
Mhm.
then better able to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think, and sometimes like the words like overwhelm, like to articulate that in the moment of experiencing that is a lot to ask the brain to do.
Yeah.
So I think something that I always try to remind myself is, if all else fails and all the coping skills go out the window, just keep breathing. Just keep breathing, having your exhalations be longer than your inhalations. And, generally that will bring clarity, a start, I mean, that or seclude yourself in your car and safely listen to music. Yeah. Yeah. So I think like just noticing the opportunity for pause, like noticing when there is just this compulsive action. Like, I think, like, whenever I hurt myself, like stub my toe, or
Mm-hmm.
whenever I'm like just leaning a little too forward in my day, figuratively and literally, like, I pause and just say, okay, let's just take a deep breath and just move like 2% slower, physically move 2% slower, even talk 2% slower. And it's amazing how just that shift, though irritating, I will say, very irritating when you first do it, really does help to slow down that mental chatter, that overwhelm, because I have to focus on slowing my body down. And so instead of just that spinning of thoughts going on in my head, I'm able to be like, okay, how slow am I walking right now? But it's been about noticing like when I do need a pause. So when I'm confused, when I'm feeling pressured, that to me has become a sign of taking a pause. When I think to myself, oh, one more email, that statement, one more for me is a indication I need to be like taking a pause.
Yeah. So you're really highlighting that thing of noticing and then responding. I mean, yeah, I can really relate to that noticing and responding. I am somebody that will take time and space to pause and breathe. I sometimes find as well that reconnecting with my senses, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be in a particularly, where I'm sat down in a meditative space for a specific amount of time, although it can
Mm-hmm.
include that. But the simplicity of just going for a walk and trying to connect with, well, what am I seeing? How am I feeling in my body? What can I smell as I'm walking around? What am I touching? Can also be a way of just trying to get back in my body a bit. Just get back to just the simple basics of just paying attention to, am I breathing? Is there air going into my
Yeah.
lungs? Or am I holding my breath?
It's
Yeah.
so important to do that. And I have so much respect and I've learned so much from you, Belinda, with the ability to pause and be like, I'm going to finish my lunch. I'm going to take a 15-minute walk and really acting on that. I think about you often when I'm like, oh, I need a pause. And I'm going to do a Belinda pause.
That's so sweet. It's interesting because I had to learn that as well.
Mhm.
I had to learn that as well because just like many people, just galloping at pace through life, and it's
Like, what's
I
the
didn't
rush? I
have
mean,
to.
the
I
end
didn't
game is death.
exactly. I didn't have to. It's like almost running at a sprint, and then you're just like, "There's no race.
Yeah.
Why are you sprinting?" But yeah, it changes the experience of time, doesn't it? Quite
Mm.
dramatically. Just even stopping for a few minutes. It's so handy in terms of interpersonal communication as well. I mean,
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh.
think if there's a coming conflict, for example, I mean, taking a pause
Mm.
can be so helpful. Not that I'm running around having conflict.
But it's powerful, right? Like, I'm thinking about times I had conflict, and man, oh man, the ability to pause and turn around is powerful. People do not understand. Like it is a difference between your career and not. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, like those moments are really important. They can end relationships, they can end careers. It blows my mind because still there's leaders out there that are like, oh, what's coaching? It's like, I don't know. I mean, have you heard of basketball and coaches there? I mean, I don't know. I think that's pretty important that they have a coach. Leaders should have
Mm.
coaches. It's the same thing there, but you had to be challenged and all that stuff. So, not that I want to make this a advertisement, but get a coach.
Get a coach, people. Yeah.
We have availability, so you can certainly reach out to Belinda or myself.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And it's,
So as at this point, we have availability, I should say, because that changes on
yeah.
a very dynamic basis.
Well, I was also thinking as well about the benefits of pausing. And I mean, spaces like coaching and integrated coaching, they're primed for just that, the space to actually stop, pause, reflect, identify, discuss, experiment, all of these things, or just be, you know, when I've offered just pure psychotherapy sessions, particularly with people who are just kind of rushing and racing and just essentially find it really difficult to be with themselves, we've just
Mhm.
sat silently
Mhm.
together. We've just paused, slowed things down. And it allows that space to connect with, well, what are your needs? What are the needs of the people around you? What's really important here? I don't know, it's such a small word, but such a big deal, really.
Mhm.
Pausing. People have access to memories as well, just giving themselves the space to remember things or to learn things. There's so much potential in pause,
Mhm.
however long or short it is.
Yeah, it allows our body to just be here in the now and the present and just catch our breath. I live in an area of the United States that has Mennonite and Amish individuals. And
Oh,
yeah, and I was driving and passed these four women. It was a Sunday, and they were mothers and they had their children around them. And I had the sense of envy, but not from like I want what you have, but from I'm glad you have it. And
right.
I need to look at that and see how I can have that. But there was such beauty in, and I know there's always a backstory and all this jazz, but I'm just saying, for my experience in the moment, driving on a Sunday, seeing these lovely ladies just sitting on the lawn with their children, laughing, enjoying themselves. And I
Oh,
thought, they've done something right there. And I think I actually joked around with my husband. I was like, if you don't stop making plans on Sunday, I am going to lock myself in the local church and I'm going to be like, nope, can't get me. This is God's day.
I was kind of half hoping you were about to tell me that you hope to, run off and join the Amish community.
Yes, yes. But that whole dedication to pause, right? Like that to
Yes.
be
Yeah.
so part of the culture, I think, around the world. And I think in some cultures it still is strong, but I am revisiting, really dedicating almost like Saturday as a recovery day and Sunday as a day of rest.
Yeah.
To get familiar with the experience of pause.
So you be walking the walk.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Right now my
It's
pause is like eating a Milano cookie.
whatever gets you there, Audrey,
Mm.
whatever gets you there. I was thinking about what you were describing about this boss that you'd had in the past that was having this moment of instability. And it's, oh, what pause can do for self regulation is pretty extraordinary. Having the space to take care of intense emotions or just emotions. Pretty special.
Mhm. And it is a choice. Like it's a choice. And I know I've lived in a world where I didn't think it was a choice. I've lived in a world where I really believed that people made me feel a certain way. And I know that hearing sometimes like you're the only one that can change it,
Mm-hmm.
or you're the one that's setting your own pace can be infuriating and really
Yes.
upsetting to hear for the first time. So I just want to acknowledge that too. And I get that. I really get that because it is upsetting because up until the point that you realize that you have contributed to the experience of your life, you really do think that it is out of your control. And so to realize that, oh my
Yeah.
God, I've had a choice this whole time can be kind of, I don't know, what would be the word that you might use?
It can feel a bit like being a passive recipient. These things are happening to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because sometimes when I have discussions with people about their time and their time management and whether they've considered different things, and they're like, I don't have time.
I
I have
know.
time to
And you know
think
what? My heart goes out to them. My heart goes out to them because we've all been there, right? We've all been there.
Absolutely. It's just like, where am I going to magic up this time from then to think about how I'm spending my time?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Ask them to do a time journal and just watch them have a meltdown. It's horrible.
yeah. I do sort of a clock exercise and with
Mm.
people, and they're so interesting and so revealing when you start to sort of dig into. There's something about having the experience of seeing in black and white how time is spent
Mm-hmm.
and just connecting to the fact that actually there are choices that it's possible to make. It may not feel that way. It may not feel like there's a choice. It may feel like being pulled in 1,000 directions, but actually there's a lot of agency
Mm.
that is often still available. And it's just about trying to weed out those from. There are some things where we have responsibilities for and to, and we're just in that. But there is some flex sometimes in other things. And I think it's just reconnecting with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is good.
It's been so lovely to talk about this with
Yeah.
you, to pause and take a moment
That's right. That's
um,
right.
to talk about this. And it's a real reminder as well about walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. As we start to wrap up, I guess I would invite listeners, a good way to notice when to pause for me has been just noticing when I'm not breathing. So when I get irritated, I'll just ask myself, okay, am I holding my breath right now? And chances are I am. And that allows me just that question of, am I breathing? and checking in with my body allows me to take a pause, and then just being able to follow it up with the breath is really helpful.
Yes.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that comes to mind for me is I can definitely relate to the holding breath, but sometimes it can be helpful to keep what we call an anchor with you. And an anchor is a little object. So when you're a kid, it might be that you have a blankie, and the blankie is the thing that gives you comfort. But when we're adults, we still need those things. They're just pitched at a different level, and perhaps many of us don't notice it as much. But I think sometimes carrying or having access to a safe and soothing object, and just connecting with that and taking a breath. So it could be anything that engages the senses, basically, and connect you to your body can be really helpful. So sometimes people tell me they carry like a little smooth pebble or an object, or it might be a piece of jewelry, and they just sit for a moment and just breathe and just feel that anchor that helps to just ground them to the moment.
Yeah, that tactile is so important sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's been really great to be here with you today, Audrey, to talk about pause. And thanks for joining us today, and take good care. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Flourishing Leader podcast. We would love to hear directly from you. Please reach out to us by emailing contact@theflourishingleaderpodcast.com.
As we all know, supporting what you enjoy by taking action matters. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review.
You can also find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Thank you again for listening in. We look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, take good care of yourself.